Welcome to EWA's FIN-LYT podcast. EWA is a fee-only RIA based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We hope all listeners of this podcast will benefit as we deep dive into complex financial topics that we will make simplified for you. And we hope that this really serves as a catalyst so that you can make the best financial planning decisions for your family and also save time.
I am joined by Ben today, and today we're going to talk about how you design a life that you never have to retire from. So, Ben, I think this will be a good topic, hit home to a lot of people that are thinking about retirement, or even younger people to gear up for down the road when they think they do want to retire. So, give us a background, opening thoughts, kind of why are we talking about this?
Yeah, because I think as soon as people start working, whether they love their job or not, they're always starting to plan for retirement, and they always have a number in mind or an age in mind where they feel like they want to shut it down. The FIRE movement has taken over a lot of people's thoughts lately of just being able to be financially independent as soon as possible. So we have people wanting to retire in their 50s, 60s, just kind of getting to a number. But part of this discussion is going to be, what does that life look like when you're actually in retirement? We found that a lot of people really like the work that they do and find a lot of purpose in having work and having things to do. And I think in retirement, when that gets taken away, a lot of people can struggle with, spending their time and figuring out what to do. So this podcast, we're going to talk about how to structure your retirement so that you're doing the things you want to do and being really cognizant of your time, because that's the only kind of non-renewable resource that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, so let's start with what you did some research on this, but let's just talk about what traditional retirement looks like. How do we get to age 65? Why is that like what everyone thinks of as retirement?
Yeah, that's kind of the standard retirement age. It's really a legacy of industrial era thinking, like a lot of people's parents kind of retired at 65 and their parents. So it's just kind of the back of the napkin number that a lot of people think they need to work to. And, that is true, but oftentimes like if you start a financial plan early, it's something that you can work towards for an earlier retirement. So oftentimes retirements become synonymous with freedom from work, but really like, what are we escaping from? And we're going to talk through kind of how to structure your life and your day after you retire. We'll sit with people in their 30s and 40s and talk through how they spend their day, and we'll do an exercise where it's called a 24-hour exercise. We break down kind of how they spend their day, 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours of working, and then kind of what are they doing, 8 hours of free time. And in retirement, you're still sleeping 8 hours, but now you have 16 hours of free time. And oftentimes we get a lot of blank stares of people trying to figure out how to spend their time when they're not working. So it's hard when you want to plan for retirement at 55 and you have another 40 years to kind of figure out what you want to do. So that's become a big issue, I think, with a lot of clients in that time frame.
Yeah, I think the 65, that Social Security, you can start at 62 and defer it till 70. People think of whatever the full retirement age is for Social Security, which I think at some point for years of it's dependent on the year you're born, but I think for a while it was around 65. Now it's like roughly 67 for most people, but I think that's where most people get that. And I think that retirement a lot of times can just be like almost like a social norm of like, hey, you should get to a point where you're you're not working, you're enjoying your life. And a couple of things that I think, not that's wrong with that, but maybe it's just a little different of an opinion is, I think like just humans in general, we're like working creatures. Like most people want to work. They enjoy working. It's hard for, some people can enjoy like just doing nothing, but a lot of people really enjoy working in some capacity. So if you could design some sort of life where you're, not just I get to 65 because like society tells me I should stop working, then I'm going to stop working, but something where you're still working and you have that freedom, like you said, Ben, where you're financially independent. And then the other thing now is with health, medicine, longevity, I think that like people our age probably will be living to over 100, maybe even 120. So I think that's going to rethink retirement a lot too, because if you retire at 65, let's say you live to 120, you have half your life now. So
That's a whole different podcast, by the
Yeah.
way, living to 120.
But so maybe maybe kind of back to what we're talking about is how do you design that life where you're not just stopping working completely?
But think about this. I mean, let's the flip side of that coin is you delay your life, you work, you get to 65, and then your health fails.
Yep.
And it's like, well, what did I save all this money for? I have a ton of regrets from I didn't take that trip I wanted to. I didn't spend that time with my kids. I didn't do X, Y, and Z. And now you're sitting at 65 and your health is not what it was, and you can't do all these things now. That's a whole different side of the conversation.
We'll talk about that in kind of the action items with health. But yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of people will delay gratification and put off their health, their well-being to work. And then, like you said, they get to the point where they have all this money, but their health goes and they never get to actually enjoy it. So let's talk about what are some action items? What can people do to actually do this? How do we tactically implement it?
Yeah, I think it's we do this oftentimes with clients, but it's doing what's called a values exercise. So figuring out like what truly matters to you from a values standpoint. What are the things that you want to focus on, and define your goals specifically. So whether that's legacy planning, what are your travel goals? What are your goals with your family and your kids? Really lay it out and make sure that you have goals that you're working towards. And just keeping work as a source of meaning, identity, community, and just having a mindset of ongoing growth. I mean, those are things that you need to always be thinking about. It's hard to do when you don't have specific goals in mind to keep those values front of mind. So the more you can define what you actually want to do with your life in your 60s, 70s, 80s, what's the kind of legacy you want to leave, then the more you're able to work towards it. That would be the biggest thing. What else on your end do you think?
I'm going to take a bite from Peter Attia, who's he's a medical doctor. You familiar with him? Okay. He's like a big, one of the biggest names in like medicine that just has like, he's a podcast and videos and stuff. But he talks about he calls it the marginal decade. So plan for, and this is from a health standpoint, but I think this applies to retirement too. And just life in general, plan for the last 10 years of your life. So he talks about like from a health standpoint, how do you set yourself up so the last 10 years of your life, you're, able to do the things you want. But same thing with like your money, your work, like what do you want to actually, how would you want to design your life at the end and work backwards from there? If you, we see some people work like, don't stop working, and that's probably not the optimal outcome, and they look back and wish they had more free time. And then we have some people that the opposite, maybe they stop working and they don't have a purpose or their fulfillment and they don't get to continue to enjoy that. So whatever that looks like of how you design the back half of your life, and start implementing that now. But I think the values, like you said, is really good. And I think, just finding a purpose and fulfillment rather than just showing up at a job probably would help that too.
Yeah, purposeful work. I mean, we're going to talk through some things that like actionable steps that you can take to help design this life, but finding work that you find a lot of purpose in when you're either in retirement or approaching retirement makes a ton of sense. Want to transition more from like a job to like a hobby or like a passion project, but something that can reshape your role and energize you rather than feeling like it's depleting you and feeling like you're grinding to get up in the morning when the alarm goes off. So whether that's consulting work, taking more of a volunteer role or like a part-time role, I mean, things that you find interesting, it's not necessarily the thing that maybe led you to that point, but finding work that you want to do is huge to just keep your brain moving.
So I would recommend doing what I like to call an energy audit. So not a time audit, but like look at, what am I doing during the day? Like, what are my actual, go every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Write down what you're doing and then look at what gives you energy and what like sucks your energy away. The people you're around, the things you're doing, and then just like do the things, cut the bad energy out. So like, I'm doing this right now, actually. That's why I brought this up. One of the things I hate doing more than anything is laundry. So I found this laundry service. You pay like, probably comes out to like 20 to $30 a week, and they come pick up your laundry, do it, bring it back. And so so doing things like that, where it's like, okay, now that's not going to suck my energy. I can just outsource that. But same thing with like your job and again, a lot of the times, like the clients we're working with, they've accumulated some money, they're in a position where they're probably close to financial independence. And so they can do this, and they're not completely tied to that paycheck, where it's like, we have some money saved that we'd be okay, but we can look at our day-to-day and sort the things like what gives me energy and what doesn't, and do the things that give you energy and do more of those things.
You really got my brain turning with this energy audit. I gotta take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing too, like on top of that, is your time, like not only energy, but what's sucking up your time. I mean, the time's the only thing that you can't really get back. And that's when I'm talking with clients that are in their 60s and like retired and have all the money, like they look back and say, man, I could have taken that vacation, or man, I could have taken more time off. Like my kids are older now. I don't see them as much. Like, what's the statistic of time spent kids, 0 to 18?
Under the age of 10, I think is like, I don't remember the stats, but it's like under the age of 10 is most of the time. And then before the age of like 18 is like 70 or 80% of the time you spend with your kids.
Yeah. No, having that hindsight of meeting with clients that are in that position, the time autonomy and just designing life around what's taking up a lot of your time and how you're spending your time makes a ton of sense. And that kind of takes more to that semi-retirement role. It's the analogy you like to use is like, if you're working super hard, you're like driving, let's say you're driving 80 miles an hour. It's so hard to go to break and go from 80 to 0. Go from 80 and then slow down to 40, slow down to 20, slow down to 0. That semi-retirement is just really helpful, I think, for a lot of people. And
let's go through 2 examples along the lines of that with like, let's go 2 big areas we work in: physicians, business owners. Let's start with physician. Let's say we have somebody that's, late 50s, early 60s. They have enough money saved. They're okay. They're financially independent, but they want to keep working because they like it. And if they stop completely, physicians in general, they go through a lot of school. They go through a lot of training. Their identity is tied up in their work. They're used to working long hours. It's really hard for them to stop, just like you said. But what can a physician do if we're at that point where we're financially independent and we want to keep working? Like, how do we help them design their life?
Yeah, it depends on the person, but I mean, we have people taking locum shifts, going part-time, working 2 days a week.
Yep.
Just not putting in nearly the amount of hours that they were. And, in our, not to get too detailed, but in our retirement analysis, that makes a huge difference. If someone's used to making $2 million a year and they're making 500,000, well, that's still, if they're doing that for 5 years, that's 5 years that they're probably not touching their portfolio. That's 5 more years that you're able to make retirement contributions. So like from an accumulation standpoint, it makes a huge difference. But then just from a peace of mind and time standpoint, it helps tremendously. So that's huge for us. And then on the same token, business owners, Jamison, what are you seeing whether it's, and this could be more complicated, if they're transitioning the business, if there are kids involved, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll say, similar situation of, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole because we could do a whole podcast on like what we have on transition planning, but like, I don't know. Yeah. Let's say they're in their, late 50s, early 60s. And, ideally at this point, there probably is some sort of like, what's the next step? Is there an exit? Are we transitioning to the kids? Are we finding somebody to come in and run this? And so whatever that looks like, I think that's a really good time. I mean, your business is most valuable if you, as the owner, were removed from it and the business still operated. That's when someone's going to actually want to buy it because they know if they take you away that it still runs and makes money. So I think that's a really good time to start thinking about that, whatever the next phase of the business looks like. Let's use one example. I don't know. Let's say you're getting ready to sell it. And you say, okay, let's audit my day-to-day. What are the things I like doing? What are the things I hate doing? And let's delegate all the things I hate doing. So now I'm going to be more energized, ideally. Always going to be problems and stressors when you own a business, but get a little bit more of your energy back and you delegate a lot of that stuff to somebody else. And sometimes when we help business owners do that, it's like a mindset shift and like a life switch of like, they may not even want to sell now or transition. They're like, well, I'm actually doing the things that I love doing and I could keep doing this because it's much more energizing. So that would probably be one thing is just, I guess in that situation, you have to think about what the end goal is, but what can you delegate and give to somebody else? And how can you just work on the things that you want? Maybe as a business owner, you love marketing and it's like, well, I'm just only going to do this and I'm going to delegate everything else to the team. And that's probably going to help whatever your next step is, whether it's a sale or transition.
Yeah, that was really good. I think one of the things you mentioned was just that mindset shift. I think that's one of the biggest like challenges or obstacles that we see with people in this position is just getting that mindset shift of delegating. I think that's hard for a lot of people.
I think you've read the thing called money scripts.
Yeah.
Well, you have these like, there's like these hardwired into your brain and I guess nervous system from like when you're a kid on how you handle money. And a lot of people like one of the money scripts is like, I think it was like paranoid or like anxious or something. And so it's like you're overly anxious about like accumulating and saving money. You may not want to spend it. And that goes back to like how you were raised and how your parents taught you about money. And so those types of people, it can be really hard for them to retire because they might be the best savers in the world and they didn't spend a lot and they've accumulated all this money. But the minute that you tell them, hey, you're not going to have an income anymore and you have to live on your investments, like they just like, they can't do it because they can't take that money out. So that's a lot of it is, like you said, is just coaching the mindset change of like, how do we shift this now to like, let's actually spend this money and do the things we want to do so we don't just over accumulate.
And that's I think the easy decision is I'm just going to keep working. Like, this is fine.
I'm
fine. Yeah. Like, this is no big deal. Like, I'm just going to keep working. The hard decision and actually like why we exist is to be a catalyst for these difficult conversations is encouraging them. Hey, you're good. Like, the analogy I'm thinking in my head is like jumping off the diving board when you're a kid, like when you're super nervous. There's a line behind you. The lifeguard's saying, "Come on, man, you gotta jump. Like, jump, retire. Like, you're good." It's easy to just keep working, and it's hard to have that mindset shift and start spending down. But if you don't do it, then it goes back to the goal planning because we have oftentimes clients saying, "Hey, 10 out of 10, the most important thing for me is enjoying my financial independence, doing all this travel, spending more, enjoying what I've saved." And the longer you work and the harder, you're not living up to what you've said is most important. Sometimes people say, well, hey, legacy is for my kids is not the most important. Well,
but they're on track.
You're on track to
millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars. Exactly right. So,
one other thing, let's talk about like health and relationships. So I think that ties into this a lot too. I got a question for you, Ben. What's the number one indicator of, I'm going to mess this up, but it's like the number one indicator of like health and longevity. Any idea?
Very vague.
Yeah.
Just a period?
Yeah. I might have butchered that, but it's something along those lines.
The number one indicator of someone who is healthy.
Of living a long, healthy life.
Oh, man. I'm gonna say getting 8 hours of sleep.
No, it's your relationships.
Better answer.
There was like a Harvard 80-year study. I think it was literally called the happiness study. And they followed people like 80 years of their life. And it was like the number one indication of like a happy, long life was your relationships.
That's a better answer than sleep, by the way.
But sleep is probably the most important of your, I'm not a doctor, but I would say it's probably the most important of your actual health stuff. But anyway, why we're bringing this up is, like we talked about earlier, is a lot of people will work and put this stuff to the side. They won't spend, sure, they're probably spending some time with their family, but like, maybe they're not spending a lot of time with their friends or their relationships aren't where they want it to be. And they're not exercising. They're not eating healthy. They're not getting their 8 hours of sleep because they're so focused on their work. And then when they go to retire, or those people probably keep working because like they don't, like, what are they going to do if they retire? But our advice would be prioritize relationships because that's, going to keep you healthy longer and keep you alive, literally alive. And then, prioritize, exercise, diet, sleep, all of those things. And that stuff will probably allow you to work longer. because you'll be able to withstand that, have the longevity to work. So I think all of those things and just not putting them to the side and getting to retirement and being like, oh no, now I have all this money saved, but like my health's in shambles.
Right. Exactly right. I agree with you 100%.
All right. Well, what did we miss? Anything else to?
No, I think we talked about it in the beginning, but just like the social pressure around just like the status of retirement, I think that can be hard. There's always a comparison factor of your peers. And just financial health is not always what you see. I think people equate like someone with a really big house or a really big car as someone who is, or a really fancy car as someone who is just super financially well off. That may or may not be true. So just try not to compare your situation to your peers because everyone's going to be different.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions about your situation or any follow-ups, feel free to reach out.
Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. Hopefully you found this helpful. Really hope this is as beneficial and impactful to as many people across the nation as possible. So hit the follow button. Make sure to rate the podcast and please share with any friends or family members that would also find this beneficial. Thank you very much.